I'm Marcel Hebbelinck. I am in October next 79 now. That makes 80 years. 80 years of vegetarianism. I have been raised in a vegetarian family. My parents were vegetarian. So when they asked me, how come, why did you decide to become vegetarian? I said, I didn't. I just was in a family where everybody was vegetarian. My brothers, my sisters, my mother, father. And also my own children have been raised vegetarian. I have two grown-up daughters and I have 3 grandchildren. And the 3 grandchildren are also vegetarian. So that makes it 4 generations. My parents, myself and my wife, my 2 daughters and the grandchildren. So if people say children can grow up properly without meat or having any animal food, this is not true. They grow up very well, they are very strong and they are intelligent children. So it's very happy that also I can show not having to do with any scientific investigation, that children can grow very well. I also have made a study on vegetarian children. A few hundred vegetarian children we have been following, and we came to the same conclusion. They are not different from the non-vegetarians. On the contrary, we found out they have less disease and they can perform at least as well as non-vegetarian. I'm born in Ghent, a medieval city in Belgium, and I have been at school there, the gymnasium and the Atheneum we call it, and then at the University of Ghent. So my family, my father had a health food store. That was the first one in Belgium. He started in 1928. Because I got so many questions in my lifetime, I got fascinated by the scientific aspects of vegetarianism. And one of the studies we made was on vegetarian children, of course. A few hundred vegetarian children we have been following and examining blood analysis, the physical fitness of those children and so on. And then we made studies also on vegetarian students at our university, compared them with non-vegetarian, same age, etc. And also we have been studying elderly vegetarians. These were the latest studies we have made. Vegetarians with a mean age of about 70 years old. And the oldest of our vegetarians were about 85, 86. And we compared them with a group of non-vegetarians living in an elderly home. And the conclusion of that study was, after doing some analysis of the blood, of the physical performance capacity and so on, that vegetarians can become as old as non-vegetarians, and that they can make the same mistakes as non-vegetarians too. That means they have to plan properly, like everybody does, a good vegetarian diet. Well, most of my life I have been in sports circles. That means from very early age my father encouraged us to go in a sports club. I practiced several sports, but the main sport was rowing. I have been rowing from the age of 12, and during 17 years I have been in competition. Rowing is a sport of endurance and also strength, and it is not an easy sport because it asks a lot. And I have been 3 times Belgian champion, and I took part in European championships. And I was very much interested also in sports in general. So I have been on the board of the Belgian Olympic Committee, and I went to the Olympic Games as a delegate to the games in Rome, in Mexico, and I have been also in Munich, and I also try to give the good example of being a vegetarian in the sporting milieu, where we have so many people who are interested in a healthy lifestyle. And when they saw that I didn't eat any meat or fish, that they said, well, I will try it also. So I had a lot of friends who were intrigued by the fact that you could have a healthy and fit life without having all the meat. But moreover, I have been also abstainer from any alcohol or drugs, and I never smoked. I must admit I once tried to smoke a cigarette when I was 16 or 17, but the hell, how was this? The taste was terrible, and I never continued to smoke. So the good example is of course very important for people to see that you can have a good life without having to slaughter animals and have to eat the meat, because it's a myth that you think that meat makes you strong. There are exceptions. There are many people who eat meat who are strong, but there are also many people who don't eat meat at all, and who are vegans, who are strict vegetarians, and do perform very well. You find them even in weightlifting, which would not expect. They always say, endurance sports, okay, you can be a vegetarian, but what about strength? What about muscular development? There are examples of world champions in strength sports who are vegans. It's not an easy step. I had it easy to become a vegetarian because I never became vegetarian because my parents were vegetarians. But for people who want to become vegetarian, it's a step you have to make because you are an exception. You are an exception in your environment. So if you ask me how many people become vegetarian because of my example, very few. Some of them are semi-vegetarian. And now and then, when they are with me, they say, oh, I also eat vegetarian. And also the influence of the example of being vegetarian is, especially when you are in a position like I was, having been not only a sportsman, but also as a scientist at the university, I was an example for others. And when we were invited at the banquet and so on, people said, what is Marcel eating there? He is vegetarian. Well, I like this also. So they try to imitate. But to become really a vegetarian, it's in the head. It's not in the body. It's just to be convicted that is a better lifestyle from the ethical point of view, because the last step is an ethical one. You engage in a way that you say, love of animals, love of nature, and I want to become a vegetarian. So there are a few who made those steps, but not the majority, of course, of my friends and the people around me. Not really. I think the way to formulate it is that as a vegetarian you can at least perform as well as non-vegetarian, but you cannot say that you're a better athlete, because many very good athletes are non-vegetarians, but as a vegetarian you can perform as well. So you don't have, maybe from the health point of view, you may say I'm better. I feel better and I have less injuries, I have less disease, but still we have to make studies on this. Such a statement is very difficult because disease and health are different forms in life and depend on lifestyle factors which are very numerous. And as a vegetarian you may have other properties which makes you more fit and which makes you having less disease. Scientifically there's no study on this, so from that point of view they may have the impression themselves they feel better, which is very important, because in life you should feel good. And if you feel good, say, well, it's my vegan or fruitarian way of life which makes I feel better. But if in fact they are better, you have to make a study on them. And we have very few or none of these studies. When Ben Jones, you remember the sprinter, one of the best sprinters in the world, he said, I'm a vegetarian. Doesn't mean that a non-vegetarian could be as good as he is. There's no proof of it. The only proof we have, they can be as good as the non-vegetarians. But if they are better, it's very difficult to prove, of course. Those elderly people like to be subjects for the study, because in their life there's not going on very much. The populations of elderly people we studied, they were living in an elderly home, and they are a little bit isolated in such a home, and they like to have interest from outside. When we come with our investigation team, they welcome us very much. So that's one point. Secondly, they collaborated very well. And we looked for a vegetarian elderly home where all the people were vegetarians. So we had about, I think, 40, 45 vegetarians. And the mean age was about 65, and the eldest was about 85 and more. And we looked for a home of non-vegetarians, which is easy to find. That's why we looked for what we call a matched sample. That means they were the same age, and they were the same gender, male, female, and they were in the same health condition. So we made a complete medical examination, we took blood samples, etc. And the final results showed that vegetarians can have, at a high age, very healthy and fit life. But that doesn't mean that they are superior. It means only that they can live as well. People react differently when you talk about changing the diet, because most people have the diet they had at home with the parents, and they don't think about the importance of a healthy lifestyle, especially the diet. It's not easy, because taste plays also a role. You have to change the taste of the people, and many people are accustomed to have the taste and the smell of what to eat. And when you say a plant-based diet, they said, well, it's not attractive for many people. So the change of the diet is one important factor in changing the nutritional way. My approach is that they should have a very good kitchen, vegetarian kitchen. Very often when I go somewhere, they say, may I try it? Say, oh, that tastes very well. They are surprised that vegetarians can eat that well. They always think, oh, you eat the grass, that's easy for you. You don't eat properly because you must have the very good taste they are accustomed to. But I give you another example. One day I was with a colleague at the restaurant. At the university, we had a restaurant especially for the academic people, where they could sit apart and talk and so on. And one day we came to the restaurant, and man who was serving there, and he said, do you have something special on the menu? Oh yes, sir, we have crocodile meat. Crocodile meat. I was a little bit shocked already. I said, oh, he tries to get me going in the other way. He said the crocodile meat, and he asked the man, how does it taste? And the man said, it has no taste at all, but the sauce is very good. So that means that a lot of meat people eat is not because of the taste of the meat, it's the taste of what's on the meat. That means the gravy, the sauce. And then it was very, very nice, and he tried, and he said, very good meat from the crocodiles. So that was the new style, you know, they have so many things which we can't imagine where the meat comes from. So that was the crocodile meat story. That means that for vegetarians it's very important, if you invite people or you go to a restaurant, that they get the meal properly served and have it tasty as well as they are accustomed to. That's a very important aspect. People want to try. They want to see how it tastes. It's not all, it takes also some time, because you have to change what they are accustomed to, and habits are very difficult to modify. It's psychological, and it takes for some people some time to get accustomed to it and to become real vegetarians. Although some of them become so fanatic that they become vegans, or as you give an example, fruitarians and so on. But the steps you take on a plant-based diet are several ones. And you can take a very high step, the vegan, or still go higher. It doesn't mean better, because vegans make mistakes too, or fruitarians. It's a discussion you could have for hours, and then it becomes a kind of, would say, superstition, that you imagine it's so much better, but in fact you have more risk to make a mistake when you go in the very extreme way. And then you have the societal, that means how you get into society, how people will look at you. Well, say it's not important. I'm a fruitarian. It's important, because you live in a society. Human beings are social beings, and they want to communicate. And if you go that extreme, they look at you as some, it's already some situations difficult to be vegetarian, to be accepted. I have respect for vegetarians who are lacto-ovo-vegetarian. I have respect for those who are strict vegetarians. I have respect, but it doesn't mean they are better. It means they have their own lifestyle, but you live in a community. You're not alone on the world. Of course, if you like to be alone, it's okay. It's up to you. And I think in general, I say, if you have the ethical conviction that the way you live is better, it's already a very, very big step. Very good point. At a certain age, I would say the ethical question is not the foremost important thing in their life. Their life is at the stage where they reach maturity which doesn't advance anymore, and they want to have a good life, to be healthy, and then the aspect of health comes on the foreground. Like you have many vegetarians who become vegetarian because they are ill, they are sick. That was the case with my father when he became, after the First World War, very, very ill because of the bad food in the trenches during the 4 years of war. He became vegetarian because he was very ill. And so you find a lot of people, and especially elderly people, who are feeling very bad. and say, well, I try vegetarianism, and they feel better because it's a healthy way of life. And that's a very important point, besides the ethical point of view, of course, the health aspect of people. If you say vegetarians have less risk to have illnesses like cancer, like high blood pressure, like diabetes, and they have proof for it that vegetarian plant-based diet, let's say in general, is healthier than the meat diet. I think elderly people are very sensitive to the health aspects, because at a certain age the ethical position will not change anymore. When you are young, you have a lot of ideals and you want to do something special, and then ethics attract them much more. But what may influence elderly people is examples of Oriental lifestyles, like Buddhism, Zen Buddhism and so on. And when you explain them that those people, most of them have a special diet, vegetarian diet or something in that direction, macrobiotic and so on. Not the macrobiotic like you see in the Western restaurants where they have macrobiotics. The macrobiotics in Zen Buddhism is a little bit different. It's more the vegan style. And they are attracted to that. It's very strange. Elderly people, they go to this Ayurvedian, you know, Ayurveda, and the Zen Buddhism and so on. And they try to follow this kind of lifestyle. Well, I never was attracted to non-vegetarian lifestyle. I was so convicted. I think in my education, my parents made me so much emotionally against killing animals or killing in the war human beings, that I never would have changed my lifestyle I had as a young one. I never thought about eating meat. And I always said to people, if you give me a lot of money just to eat a steak, I wouldn't accept it. I couldn't. I think I would become sick just thinking about putting that meat in my mouth. That is a question of feeling. So I never had been attracted. And when they say, oh, you are missing something in your life, the good smell of a steak, and that tastes so well and so on. I say, to me, it doesn't taste well, it doesn't smell well, it stinks. So sometimes I go like this and I defend my ideas, but the real sentiment is that's awful to eat flesh, especially when it's still with the blood there. They let the bloody steak. I can't imagine how people can eat this. So I had no difficulty, never have been attracted to eat any meat or even fish. When I see the fish coming there and having no more and dying then and so on. It must have been in my education, I think.